tell us the first thing that came to mind when you came across this project. What was the process like? Sure. And how are you guys feeling about it so far?
Sure. How we came across the project, I heard the podcast right when Lore came out. I love podcasts. I love scary shows. And I thought, what is this? It's so cool. I love the music. I love the voice. It was so different. It was so not Hollywood. It was about history. And I found it so compelling. And I was scared to death. And I thought, what is this? So I tweeted it at Aaron Mahnke, the creator of the podcast and voice of the podcast, and just started kind of talking. And together with my partners at Propagate, Ben Silverman and Howard Owens, they had some feedback. We started to develop the project, brought it to Gail and her team at Valhalla, and like, how can you not love Galen Hurd? She's done so many great movies. I mean, as a kid, Terminator was my favorite movie, you know, and that's just one of many incredible stories that she's told with an amazing, directors and other producers and writers. So we started to develop it and wanted to do something different with it. You know, today's climate with podcasts, with Snapchat, with Twitter, the way that we're viewing and interacting with content has changed, right? And as somebody who prides myself on innovation, we thought, how can we do this differently? We love docs, and I know you've talked about it before. Like, we're from this generation where we love docs, but we love scripted stuff too. And we thought, how can we do this in a new way? And so we worked with Aaron to try and kind of formulate that, and we shared it with, the team at Amazon, led by Conrad Riggs, and they loved it and have been very supportive of us trying to innovate and do something different. So the show's a mix of documentary and scripted segments, and it taps into the archetypal horror stories that have inspired everything from Chucky to Freddy Krueger. So that's why I love the show, and that's why we were able to get people like this incredible actress involved.
Definitely. I mean, come on, Teen Wolf, man. Teen Wolf.
Dude, tell me I love it. I love this show.
I loved it. I've been watching this since it first came out. Yeah. And as for you, Holland?
I was saying earlier that I grew up on Teen Wolf, and I was, pretty much throughout my 20s on Teen Wolf. So now I'm very excited to play an adult on television now, because I've been an adult in real life for a number of years. But yeah, when I got a hold of Lore, it was actually my first audition with this new agency I was with, and I didn't want to seem annoying, but I kept picking at them, like, is there any news from Lore? Just that project, that Irish project, is there any news? And I was I sort of was just what is the saying? That I was just chasing after something that I thought wasn't real.
She was a fangirl.
For me? I was fangirling
Let's
a
be
little
real.
bit.
She was one of us.
And I really didn't, I was kind of just doing it for my own humor of, just wanting it to go further. And so when I actually heard back, it was quite a while. I think it was like 3 weeks, which is quite a bit of time for television. And when they actually got back to us, I was like, I think I willed it into existence because I was so annoyed.
I think it took 3 weeks because I didn't believe it at first. Right. I was like, wait a minute, who wants to do it? And she's a fan of the podcast? So we were so lucky to have her.
I was really just excited that it was a true story. I've been a fan of docs and nonfiction, and historical fiction and nonfiction are my favorite mediums, and so the fact that this girl really existed, and the fact that she was so unique for her time period, and the fact that I had no idea that Irish folklore was taken so seriously in Ireland as part of essentially a religion. And I was obsessed with the Salem witch trials in the 1600s in my history class growing up. So the fact that it was almost the 20th century where they had a lot of the same practices in Ireland that they had in the 1600s in America, that fascinated me in itself. So those were just a few of the characteristics that drew me to the project, and obviously an amazing team. And if an American gets to use an Irish accent on screen, we're pretty game for that.
Definitely. And also, like, what did you guys find most overwhelming with the process of the production?
Yeah, I would say most overwhelming was the fact we were trying to do something new. Like scripted storytelling. There's so many awesome shows. We're in the golden age, I think, of television, for sure. But usually, minus the characters and the plot, they're kind of all told in a similar way, And so to try and do something new, it's not easy. Nobody likes change, right? So we took, I think, a couple of the best documentarians in television, Mark Minucci and John Halpern, and paired them with one of the greatest minds in scary storytelling, Glenn Morgan from X-Files. And to kind of find that rhythm, to get our sea legs, to figure out how we would tell the stories, it was a creative process. I think back to like when people talk about, the Rolling Stones or the Beatles making an album, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, but you end up kind of with something great. And that's where we think we finally got to once we started shooting and got the talent involved and saw the stories come to life. And I think it all goes back to really those original conversations with Aaron Mahnke. I think, he's the real star of all of this. This is a guy who created a podcast in his basement when no one else was serving the horror audience because he wanted to tell stories that he was passionate about, right? And I've worked in Hollywood and made shows for a really long time, and I love the screenwriters and the community that we have there. But Aaron didn't come from that. He's a regular guy who was sitting at home with his wife and his kids and wanted to do something different and took a huge swing, and he galvanized an audience and a fan base and helped make this project possible. So when we were, trying to find that mix of documentary and scripted, and we knew we wanted to have a voice to drive it, there was talks of, I'm not going to say their names, but some really huge actors to possibly provide that voice. And we never considered anyone but Aaron. Like, he is lore. Aaron Mahnke is lore. And I think his DNA is a huge part of what we're doing, and I'm so proud of him and proud of this show because of that.
Gotcha. And my last question is, how do you think the fans and the viewers are going to receive this?
I hope well. Come on.
Deadline. Receive
I
it
hope
well.
well.
I'll speak. I'm not the executive, so I can speak for the reviews. I'm just excited that I love mixed media. I can't say enough about that. And I said this earlier, I keep repeating myself, so I apologize. But my favorite shows are The Jinx and The Keepers because I am 31 years old. That is my generation. And that they told unscripted in a scripted format, and now it's time to tell scripted in an unscripted format. And I think this new, I'm proud to be a pioneer of this, just a small part of this new format of storytelling. And I love that we're bringing a podcast to life. And I think I love how everybody, there's no one leader that, everybody follows anymore. We have Hollywood executives chasing radio shows now. I mean, there is no end and beginning of how things are made and where people find inspiration and content. And so I credit social media, and I'm excited to be living in an age where everything feels homegrown again. Albeit we're dealing with more advanced technology, we're still finding the heart in that technology, and Aaron Mahnke's a perfect example.
Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
And what is it like bringing this to Comic-Con now, where you're like putting your baby out into the world?
It's so cool. This is amazing. I love Comic-Con. I've been to New York Comic-Con several times. I've been to San Diego Comic-Con several times as a fan. And to be here and see people responding to lore and this project, the haunted house experience that they have here for lore, it's just rad. For people to know the property and kind of what Aaron and our team has built is very, very cool. It's inspiring. I think also too, you don't see a lot of things that have documentary roots at Comic-Con. In history, I can't think of one.
No.
So I think even in that regard, it's kind of new and different and innovative. I'm proud of that.
So I know you are horror stories and everything, but how dark will go on terms of the story on different types?
It depends. Like the podcast, there's all different types of tones. There's all different types of stories. There's werewolves, there's vampires, there's, the story of Robert the Doll that is what inspired Chucky and those types of movies. So, it's designed to be scary and pull you in and engage you. We always say the scariest stories are real, and I think when you look at the show and when you get a chance to watch it, where it flows in between the scripted and the documentary, the idea there was sometimes the real stuff, the documentary types, are even scarier than the A story, the primary story. Yes, at times it is very scary and it is very dark. That being said, with a few exceptions, I think, it's probably a little in between PG-13 and R. Yeah.
The first episode, it feels like you're kind of shying away from the gore, unless it was just the screener, because you've got the part where they're actually like operating on the body.
Yeah.
You can't see how.
Which episode did you see?
The entirety. I thought it was just the first episode, so the vampire one.
Okay.
I don't know if that's actually your first episode or not, but yeah. So they're doing the autopsy.
Yeah, they made a tonic that episode.
Yeah. But you can't. half the screen is basically blacked out.
Yeah.
Which I thought was odd considering it's a streaming service. You could go as dark as you want to and as bloody as you want to.
Sure.
So can you talk about how you decided where to draw the line of that?
I mean, for me, the real horror was in the emotional confrontation between a father and a husband who's devastated because he feels like the only way to save his children is to dig up his daughter, pull out her heart, and put it on a fire, right? That is horrifying. And I think it was much more powerful to speak to that emotional experience than the literal gore. I love gore. I love horror movies, but I thought it was much more powerful to do it this way. And that's what Glenn and our team, that's what we wanted to do.
Holland, can you talk a little bit more about your character and the story that you're a part of?
Yeah, my name is Bridget Cleary in the series, and it was a woman that was living in the 1890s, and she had a dressmaking business, and so she was actually much more financially successful than her husband's business, and that was a rarity for the time, to say the least. And I don't know how much I can or cannot say. Anyone's obviously heard the story, you know what happens, but for those that haven't heard the story, there's an argument that ensues at the top of the scene, at the top of our episode, with the guy that plays my husband, Cahal Pendred, who is absolutely phenomenal. He's been acting like 18 months, and he's so talented. He came from an MMA background.
Yeah.
I'm a really big fighting fan. So I'm just a fan of Cahal's acting work. So the fight ensues where he doesn't want her to leave the house, and we don't really know, is he jealous of her, or is he in fact actually worried about her? And when she returns, she's acting quite different, and he attested to it, a changeling has overtaken her body. And back in those days, it only took, at least in Ireland, it took 2 males, and that could be a husband and his friend saying, okay, she's got a problem, she's crazy, she has a changeling in her, and that's all it took for there to be a exorcism, or an honor killing, where it's obviously not an honor's nowhere near that, but they're not prosecuted is my point, and there's no court trial. And Bridget Cleary's story changed a lot of that. I don't know, can I go that far? I don't know what to say. I've got the boss down here, so but yeah, there's a lot of marital issues, and it's is she a changeling, or is he just jealous of her? So, and we technically don't know, but the changelings will take on the human form and really act like they're not there. And so that's sort of the debate throughout the episode. I personally believe it was Bridget, but I played Bridget, so.
Yeah. That one I thought was particularly powerful because certainly this happened a long time ago. But I think you can look on what's going on in many ways in our country right now. We're still at a place where women are held back, and women aren't given the credit and the opportunities that men are. So I think, we like to think of ourselves as modern times as, a little more advanced than they used to be. But truthfully, persecution still happens in every country, including the United States of America. So I think, what does that say about us? I'm not sure. But I think telling these stories, we can learn about ourselves and we can be entertained at the same time. But her performance is incredible. I love the episode. The male lead does a great job, to where at the end I just absolutely hated him. But his performance is great.
We have about 2 more minutes. And how did you do with the brogue? Did you work with a dialect coach?
I did. There was a guy out of England named Paul, and he was absolutely phenomenal. I got a couple hours with him, and then honestly, Boardwalk Empire.
Yes.
Oh my gosh,
Kelly MacDonald,
thank you. I was going to say Michelle McDonald. Kelly MacDonald was absolutely brilliant. I know she's Scottish in real life, but she does a great Irish accent. Obviously, it's like 1920, so it's about 30, 40 years prior to this period, but that helped a lot when it came to my first audition for Laura. And then good old Cahal. Cahal was our resident Irishman. Most of my scenes were with him, and he was lovely, and letting me just pick his brain because different provinces have different inflections, and this is Tipperary, which had a bit more of a sing-songy tone. So it was a lot of fun. I had a hard time shaking it after I left, and when I was first auditioning for it, I wouldn't get out of it. So my mom would call me, and she was like, "Is this how this is going to be from now on, Holland, with every audition you're on?" And because it was on such a long-running show that I'm establishing kind of my tone and how serious I take my auditions. It's it was the first audition out of the gate. Everyone's like, so this is what it's going to be like, Holland? Really? You're just going to stay in it all the time? But as you practice the accent more and more, I actually found it was quite easy to break and have a day. And then when you rolled, you had the Irish accent. And then, but at the end of the project, I was a bit sad to let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I miss it.
I also think this is a cool show. When I watch a show, like take Narcos as an example, I just finished season 3, and I find myself when I'm watching it, I'm like Googling every drug lord in the world. I'm like, who is this Narcos? I'm going really far down the rabbit hole just because that's the way my brain works. But with lore, I think with X-Ray, which is Amazon's layer, you can go into the stories and the history. And what's cool about the show, all being real, you can look up Bridget. You can see what happened to her and all the little pods within it. So if you like documentaries and you like history and you like going down those rabbit holes, this is a very satisfying experience.